Also just great friends, former Secretary of the Navy Richard Danzig, Admiral John Nathman, and General Jim Smith. Please thank them for their distinguished record of service. I also want to thank the wonderful people of West Virginia. Particularly those who have worn the uniform of our country. More of you are veterans here than in almost any other state in the nation. So many Guard members from this very armory have been deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan on tour after tour, year after year. And that means there are more West Virginians who had to say goodbye to these heroes, who've borne the burdens of their absence in ways that are often immeasurable. An empty chair at the dinner table, or another Mother's Day where mom's someplace far away. So your sacrifice and the sacrifice of your loved ones is immense, and it must never be forgotten. Now, there is an election here tomorrow.
Yeah!
I am extraordinarily honored that some of you will support me.
Yes!
I understand that many more here in West Virginia will probably support Senator Clinton. But when it's over, what will unify us as Democrats, and what must unify us as Americans, is an unyielding commitment to the men and women who've served this nation, and an unshakable fidelity to the ideals for which they've risked their lives. But without that commitment, many of us wouldn't be here today. And I am one of those people. My grandfather, Stanley Dunn, enlisted after Pearl Harbor and went on to march in Patton's army in World War II. My grandmother, meanwhile, worked on a bomber assembly line while he was gone. And my mother was born at Fort Leavenworth. When my grandfather returned, it was to a country that gave him the chance to college on the GI Bill, to buy his first home with a loan from the FHA, to move his family west, all the way to Hawaii, where he and my grandmother helped raise me. And today my grandfather is buried in Punch Bowl National Memorial Cemetery in the Pacific, where 776 victims of Pearl Harbor are laid to rest. I knew my grandfather when he was older, but whenever I meet young men and women along the campaign trail who are serving in our military today, I think about what my grandfather was like when he was enlisted. A fresh-faced man of 23 with a hearty laugh and a ready smile. These sons and daughters of America are the best and bravest among us. They are part of an unbroken line of heroes who overthrew a king for the sake of an ideal, who freed the slaves and faced down fascism, who fought for freedom in Korea and Vietnam, from Kuwait to the Balkans, who still wake up every day to face down the gravest dangers in Iraq, Afghanistan, and all over the world. When our troops go into battle, they serve no faction, they serve no party, they represent no race or religion. They are simply Americans. They serve and fight and bleed together out of loyalty not just to a place on a map or a certain kind of people, but to a set of ideals that we have been striving for since the first shots rang out at Lexington in Congress. The idea that America could be governed not by men but by laws, that we could be equal in the eyes of those laws, that we could be free to say what we want and write what we want and worship as we please, that we could have the right to pursue our individual dreams, but also the obligation to help our fellow citizens pursue theirs. Allegiance to these ideals has always been at the core of American patriotism. It's what unites a country of so many different opinions and beliefs. It's why some of us may disagree with our decision to start this war in Iraq, but all of us stand united in our support for the brave men and women who waited. That's how it should be. That's how it should be, but it's not how it's always been. One of the saddest episodes in our history was the degree to which returning vets from Vietnam were shunned, demonized, and neglected by some because they served in an unpopular war. Too many of those who opposed the war in Vietnam chose to blame not only the leaders who ordered the mission, but the young men who simply answered their country's call. 4 decades later, the sting of that injustice is a wound that is never fully healed, and one that should never be repeated. The young men and women who choose to serve and are defending the very rights and freedoms that allow Americans to speak out against government actions we oppose, they deserve our admiration, they deserve our respect, they deserve our enduring gratitude. At the same time, we must never forget that honoring this service and upholding these ideals requires more than saluting our veterans as they march by on Veterans Day or Memorial Day. It requires marching with them for the care and benefits they have earned. It requires standing shoulder to shoulder with our veterans and their families after the guns fall silent and the cameras are turned off. At a time when we're facing the largest homecoming since the Second World War, the true test of our patriotism is whether we will serve our returning heroes as well as they've served us. We know that over the last 8 years, we've already fallen short of meeting this test. We all learned about the deplorable conditions that were discovered at places like Fort Bragg and Walter Reed. We've all walked by a veteran whose home is now a cardboard box on a street corner in the richest nation on earth. We've all heard about what it's like to navigate the broken bureaucracy of the VA, the impossibly long lines or the repeated calls for help that get you nothing more than an answering machine. Just a few weeks ago, an 89-year-old World War II veteran from South Carolina told his family, "No matter what I apply for at the VA, they turn me down." The next day, he walked outside of an outpatients clinic in Greenville and took his own life. Now, how can we let this happen? How is this acceptable in the United States of America? The answer is it's not. It is an outrage. It is a betrayal of the ideals that we ask our troops to risk their lives for. But it doesn't have to be this way. Not in this country. Not if we decide that this time will be different. There are many aspects of this war that have gone inalterably wrong, but caring for our veterans is one thing we can still get right. When I arrived in the Senate, I sought out a seat on the Veterans Affairs Committee along with Jay Rockefeller, so I could fight to give our veterans the care they need and the benefits they deserve. Together, we fought to make sure that the claims of disabled veterans in Illinois and other states were being fairly heard. And we forced the VA to conduct an unprecedented outreach campaign to disabled veterans who receive lower than average benefits. I passed laws to get homeless veterans off the streets and prevent at-risk veterans from getting there in the first place. I led a bipartisan effort to improve outpatient facilities at places like Walter Reed and slash red tape and reform the disability process because recovering troops should go to the front of the line and they shouldn't have to fight to get there.